Welcome back. So, it's been 3 years since I bought the Canon R5C, and I can say without hesitation that this really isn't your typical mirrorless hybrid. This camera sits in a strange but beautiful middle ground, I guess. It's a real cinema tool, but disguised as a mirrorless body. By the way, this video won't be a technical review, it's more of a reflections, a field report, I guess, of me using this camera for the past 3 years in a real-world environment for photography, filmmaking, and really everything in between. So let's get into it. Back in June 2022, I was looking for a camera that could generally do both stills and video, and without too much compromise. Something that could match my photography needs, but also bring a real cinema features to the tables, like waveforms and shutter angles, those kind of things. And the R5C felt like the right answer. By the way, I already did a 1-year review that you can view somewhere around here, if you're interested, where I cover more in depth all of the features of that body, like the technical gritty things, what I like and what I dislike about this camera. So make sure to watch this before you watch this one if you're interested. Because the thing is that Canon has updated the R5C quite a lot since, and it's definitely not the same camera it was back in 2022. Now, just for a bit of history, the R5C is the fruit of a huge backlash from the overheating issue that we found on the R5 and R6 when shooting in 4K and there is a 8K video mode on the R5. At the time, someone online joked that the solution could be to simply slap a fan on the back of the R5 to help with overheating. A nice DIY solution, I guess. Well, a year and a half later, guess what happened? I guess that DIY solution was good enough for Canon Corporate because guess what? We have an R5 with a fan on the back. Now, a part of me wishes that I was at that Canon HQ meeting when they brainstorm what to do next with the R5 overheating issues. And I kind of imagine someone joking about adding a fan on the back of the R5 as a quick fix. But that would have been like bad engineering, right? Because let's be honest, nobody would buy a mirrorless stills camera, which by the way are supposed to be smaller than DSLR, with a massive fan bolted to it. And I guess our next question was, what's bigger than a stills camera? And in which case scenario, customers wouldn't mind having a larger camera? Well, Filmmaker don't care about how big their camera are, and in fact, for some, the bigger the better. And I don't know why, but in my head I picture that video,
nobody's gonna know. They're gonna know.
While someone at Canon just takes an R5, slaps a fan on the back of it, and in the front sticks AC, and just hit market with it. Because technically that's exactly what Canon did. They took an R5, added a fan, split the OS in two, and gave us a camera that could shoot broadcast quality video while keeping the photo performance of a 45 megapixel sensor. And that's all they did. And honestly, it was a pretty genius move. And you have to remember that all of that was happening during COVID with all of the uncertainty of that time. Now look, the R5C, it's far from perfect. But the more I use it, the more I love it. This camera is so unique, and really it has no real counterpart even in 2025. And I'm not saying it's the best mirrorless camera out there, I'm just saying that at that price point, you get a fully fledged cinema camera while keeping the ability to shoot photos. Because in the end, cinema cameras are not only about the crazy dynamic range. In fact, the R5C has 14 stops of dynamic range, so it kind of sits in the middle range, but it's everything else that makes this cinema camera feel like a proper tool. You have the view assist tool, you have shutter angles, you have better codecs, all of those things in a much smaller package for a cinema camera. To give you an example, last spring I documented the earring spawn on Vancouver Island. It was a fast-paced, wet, and a little bit chaotic, but a beautiful event. And there were moments when I had to choose if I wanted to shoot photos or record videos of wildlife scenes that might never happen again. And while you can record a still in C-Log when shooting videos, which might be sufficient for some, you cannot record any kind of video when in photo mode. And switching between photo and video takes about a few seconds, which almost felt like you have like two bodies in your camera and you're just reaching for the second body. Because the second you switch from photo or video, you get a brand new interface with a set of tools that are dedicated to either shooting photos or recording videos. So there is no worrying that you are using the correct color profile that may have been switched between photo and video mode, or even just forgetting to set back your correct shutter speed because this camera uses shutter angle. So I guess in the end, it's not like you're trying to do two different things at the same time, kind of okay, but you can concentrate on doing one task very well, and it's just a different mentality. This is where the Canon R5C really shines, because Canon didn't really cut that many corners with this camera. And some of my favorite things are the fact that the internal XF AVC codecs are really excellent. It's a beautiful balance of quality and file size. And honestly, I never really like MP4 HAVC codec. I kind of find them gimmicky. This camera can shoot 8K, obviously, I really do, but I do love the fact that the 4K footage is oversampled, so it's stack sharp yet still cinematic in a way, and it works in 4K DCI up to 60 frames per second. Another feature I use all the time on the R5C thanks to the 8K sensor is the ability to have a Super 35 and Super 16 crop modes. It's 2K for the Super 16, but 4K for the Super 35, which is great to punch in when using the zoom lens like the 24-70 and get a little bit closer to your subject. The R5C can also record in full frame 4K 120 frames per second, and while it doesn't line skip, it does some sort of like a pixel binding instead of oversampling, so you do lose a bit of sharpness and detail. Still, for slow motion work, it looks great. Like I said earlier, what makes the R5C a great camera is that it has all of the features that you would expect in a cinema cam, like the waveforms, the false colors, shutter angle, the ability to fully customize what is sent through the HDMI, the ability to run the menu while recording. It's just this little thing that really help at any given time. For example, if I press this small button next to the shutter, I can capture a still at any time when recording. It's a TIFF file that will match the resolutions and the picture profile I've selected, so for example 4K 24p C-Log3. And by the way, I'll go over all of my custom buttons at the end of this video, so stay tuned. I shoot everything in C-Log3 cinema gamut. It's not as flat as a C-Log2 obviously, but it's enough for what I need in most cases, and Canon has been kind of like tweaking the C-Log3 on the R5C through firmware updates. And by the way, the R5C cannot shoot in C-Log2 even in RAW. When recording RAW, you are just choosing how to interpret the footage in post. So it's not because you select C-Log2 in Resolve that it will magically get more dynamic range out of this camera. I just wanted to mention it because I see it online a lot. Now, will C-Log2 ever be added to the R5C? I was hopeful for a while, but then Canon released the R5 Mark II last summer. It has a new sensor and supports C-Log2. And I do think that Canon tried to push the C-Log2 inside the R5C or even the R5, but the results probably weren't that great. It most likely needed new hardware. Now let's talk about the autofocus. It's good, not perfect, but good for most people, I think. It sometimes does struggles a lot in backlit scenes or low light environments. But honestly, having the ability to quickly swap between the different focusing modes can really help you getting better results, and I'll talk more about this later. Speaking of low light, I love the dual native ISO on the R5C. The first base is 800 and the second is 3200, and that's plenty enough for me because I don't shoot in total darkness. I don't really see the point. Next, IBIS or in-body image stabilizations, and I'll be short here because the R5C doesn't have it, and I understand that can be a deal breaker for some. But on my end, I'm actually glad it doesn't have it, especially for video, because Canon's IBIS hasn't been the greatest for video. And on the R5C, the digital IS, when paired with the RF glass, for example, is excellent because most of the RF glass are stabilized and it works really well when paired with the digital IS. And I found the result much more natural than having the wobbly sensor. And honestly, I often shoot handheld with the 100 to 400mm, even in light wind or on a boat. And if you use slow motion footage, you can get actually really good results. In the end, for video, the R5C does 98% of what I need. And more importantly, it's incredibly reliable because once again, I never have to worry about overheating or having the wrong shutter speed or the wrong color profile when switching back between photo and video. And 3 years later, I don't really feel like I need a new video camera. It is no secret that when the R5C launched, the battery life was simply terrible. But over the years, through firmware updates, Canon had the ability to kind of like tweak things a little. And with the newer LP E6P batteries, those released with the R5 Mark II last year, those are compatible with the R5C, and with those you get much better autonomy, and now you're kind of in the realm of your typical mirrorless camera. On the photography side of things, the R5C is a 45 megapixel beast. It's fast, sharp, reliable. Like I said in my first review, I do love the 45 megapixel sensor, so I can heavily crop when shooting wildlife. But in most other situations, I'll actually use a mist filter to dial down that sharpness, because I'm still stuck on the pleasing sharpness of a 35mm film negative. Let's talk about the autofocus. It's good to note that the autofocus on the R5C acts quite differently on the video mode and photo mode. On photo mode, the IF is excellent. Maybe not quite as a Sony level tracking, I guess, but plenty good for 95% of what I do. Honestly, as long as I can track whales and birds, I'm happy. While I don't miss IBIS in video mode, I do miss it though for photography, because with my old R6 that I don't have anymore, I could shoot 1 to 2 second exposure handheld, and it was quite fun, especially when I was too lazy to take my tripod out. When it comes to durability, the R5C is much tougher in looks, and I know some people were concerned about the fan and the possible water intake, but I've used the R5C in the rain, snow, fog, on boats, on rainy mountain trails, and only once I had an issue with some condensations in the EVF and lens, but I'm also pretty sure it wasn't my fault on how I stored the camera overnight. Canon is known for great weather sealing on most of their camera body and lenses, and the R5C holds up in most cases. Let's talk about how I set up my R5C, because one of the great things about this camera is that you have a lot of custom buttons. So we'll go out and I'll show you how I've mapped my buttons for both photo and video modes. Let's go. So I started going on the coast. There would be a much better landscape to show you how I customized the R5C and also get away from the office. It was a bit noisy. There was some construction happening. Well, it turns out there's also some construction happening here, so it seems to be following me around, but that's fine. We'll just power through. And I'm going to show you how I set up my R5C, all the custom buttons in video, then in photo mode. I have a bit of a makeshift setup here because I don't have a recorder that can record the audio interface. So what I'm doing is that I actually have the R5C here, a cable with a capture clip running to my iPad, and I'm recording the iPad display. So you'll see the interface as well as this angle here with the button and what they do. And you should now be able to see the display as well as this. So I guess we'll go in number of buttons here. The first one is AF on and 1. And so the way I customize it here is that if I click on it, you'll see a little target in the middle of the display, and this allows me to start tracking if I'm using the electronic viewfinder, so the R5C is to my face, and so I don't have access to that display. So with the joystick here, I can move to what I want to track, and then if I click set, you can see that there is a little box here, and it's now tracking that little coast over there to, like, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but doing a pretty decent job. And if I need to cancel that, I'm going to click here the little bin here to remove this. Now it does the exact same thing as just punching here and clicking on the display, as you can see. But again, this is really to do when I have the viewfinder onto my face and then I can't really see what I'm doing with the display. Number 2 is the magnifier, and it's just the same one. I haven't touched this, so if I punch it in, I can really see a viewfinder here, like close-up, to see if my shots are really in focus. Number 3, same, I haven't touched this, it's info, so this will like toggle through my different viewfinder modes. So I have like this kind of like windowed in where like all of the different UI, the ISO, the shutter speed, all of that is not on my picture. And if I punch it in, now I just have a clean display, which is useful when I just want to see that my composition is good. Cue number 4 is our fourth button here. This is just the same thing. I left it on menu just to be able to quickly access my menu here. Now, number 5 is auto iris. So I did change this one. So if I click on it, what it'll do is that it'll toggle on and off the ability of the R5C to track faces. So right now there is a little icon for a little face. This means that if someone walks in, it's going to select that person and try to track it. And sometimes I'm shooting a landscape, someone go in front of it, and I don't want the focus to change to the person, so in that case I would turn this off. To the right I have number 6. It used to be AF lock, and now I changed it to toggle between my different focus modes. So right now the R5C is going to focus throughout the whole sensor. If a subject walks in with a person, for example, it's going to focus on that person. But let's say that now sometimes it's a bit difficult to to get my focus right and I want to focus on something very specific on my frame, I can toggle between the different modes here. And as you can see, here I have kind of like a medium size. And if I move it here with joystick, it can like focus on the front of the rock here, or if I want it like at infinity, I can move it. And then I have, if I toggle once more, I have even a smaller window, which is very good for like focus, very detailed focus. So if I zoom it here and I move, and I want to make sure that this little poke sticking out of the water is the thing in focus. And if I move here, the focus will move on the rock in the front. Moving on, we have number 7, which is right here on top of the camera. So I'll try to adjust my angle here. And so this used to do, well, I can't remember what it is. Now what it does is that it's going to toggle on and off my digital IS. So if I look on the left of the display here, if I turn this off, you can see that it's clearly like zoom out, because the digital IS has to crop in a little bit onto the frame to be able to stabilize the shot. So I have this right in there, so sometimes I don't need IS, and so it's right there on my fingertips, and it's very useful, especially on a tripod. So very simple. The next one is number 8 here. It used to, I think, turn off the display of like the small display here, like backlit it, but I never used that. And what it does right now is that it's going to toggle on and off my false color. Number 9 here is similar. It's going to be able to see focus peaking. So as you can see here, you can see the focus peaking turning on and off. And again, sometimes you can see it turns everything, well, purple or red, and it can be a bit jarring sometimes, especially when you're trying to compose. So being able to compose without it, and then you can just toggle it back on to make sure that you are correctly in focus. Moving on here, we have button number 10, which used to be able to record from it, I believe, and so it's red around, but I changed that because I just want my shutter button to be the record and stop record. So this one actually will be able to toggle between my different white balance modes. So if I click once on it, and I use that wheel here, you can see I can switch between auto white balance, my preset A, preset B, and then all the different presets here. So again, it's very useful if I want to leave it in auto, and if I see that the auto is shifting in a weird way, I can just toggle back to Kelvin, and then I can adjust my Kelvin value by going onto button number 13, which is also red, which also used to be for recording, I believe. And if I click once on it, then I can change the value of my Kelvin. After 13, we're going to go back in time and we're going to take a look at button number, which is called function, and it's right here on the top of the camera, right by the wheel. And what does it do? Well, this allows me to record a still in video mode. If I click once on it, you'll see a small icon. That means that it records a still. Right now it's in 4K 24p in C-Log 3. So that means that once I take the SD card, and there'll be a still ungraded, which is great if you're using this camera to go scouting and you want to see what the C-Log 3 will look at the locations. And our final button is number 12, which you cannot see here because it's in the front of the camera. So I'll switch it like this, and you can see here, hidden is number 12. So now, what does it do? Well, I set that up to quickly swap between 24p and 120p. So if I push it, it's moving to SNF, which is slow and fast. And here you can see I have 120p/24p because I cannot shoot directly 120 frames per second on the R5C. What it does is that it shoots 4K and it slows down from 120 to 24p. And just like that, I can quickly switch back and forth if a whale comes out, for example, which they often come here. And I'm in 24p, instead of going to go through all my settings because I want slow motions, well, I can simply push that button, and right now I'm shooting slow motions at 120p. So that's for all of the buttons. Now let's take a look at the wheel. There are 3. So the main one here below my thumb, right by the shutter, is the main one, which allows me to change my shutter speed. So I can increase and reduce. And I can also do that because it's an RF lens with the ring on the lens. But if I use a EF lens, I cannot use that. That's why it's still mapped to the aperture. Next, I have the second wheel here around button number 7, which this one allows me to change my ISO. So I can go to the base of 800, 1000, all the way to whatever I need to do. And the final wheel is right here by the set button. Now this one forever used to be basically useless in video mode. Canon would not let you map it. And it's only with one of the latest firmware updates, I believe, that you can finally assign a function to it. And I chose to assign it as well for my white balance, but I found that I rarely use it. So if I move like low, I can reduce my Kelvin value. If I can also increase it. And we are now in photo mode. As you can see, it's the different interface, the one that you may be the most used to if you're shooting on an R5, on R6, and so on. And again, all those buttons can be assigned to whatever you want, I believe, to an extent. So the first one again is AF on. So this one is what it's supposed to do. It's just allow me to make my light measure and then also grab focus. So I map this. It's very simple, very straightforward. Nothing really changed here. The second one, again, magnifier number 2, I have left it as is because I often try to nail focus like this. I have the menu here, which basically allow me to have access the quick menu if I need to change my memory mode, and then with the joystick here, I can go back and forth between different quick settings here. So again, very straightforward. Number 5 here, this is the auto iris. So this one just toggle back and forth between servo and one shot. Again, very useful if a fast object comes to my frame, I want to be able to move quickly into servo mode. Here I have AF lock for number 6. So this one here is going to allow me to change between my different focusing mode. Again, very useful because sometimes I found that the tracking just track everything but what I want to track. So my default mode is like the old style, like cross one, again, like I used to on the 5D Mark III, or why not? I'm old school, I guess. But I do sometimes use the zone AF here. And again, by switching between this button number 6 here, I can go back on it, and with that little wheel on the top, I can just switch between whichever one I want. Button 7, I haven't changed it. It allows me to switch between my different photo modes. So I have like manual, bulb, C1, C2, and all of those. So again, this is the default one, and I like it that way. Moving on here on top, I have number 8 here, which allows me to toggle back and forth on that smaller display to see the different quick settings. And if I long press on it, it will actually change the color of the display, which is useful at night, I guess, but I rarely use it. Number 10 here won't work because basically what it does is it toggles back and forth between the viewfinder and the display, but right now I guess because I'm recording to the iPad, you cannot override the setting. Then we have function 11 here on top of the camera. This one is very useful to me. If I click on it, I can quickly swap between the two different wheels, again to my different focusing mode, and then to this, like if I want a one-shot, servo, auto white balance, so all those quick settings can be assigned. And those are the ones I use the most, are the two first one here. If I want to go to like a burst mode, or if I want to go with the upper wheels to the different focusing mode. So this is again right again my fingertip here, and I know exactly where it is. So even in complete darkness, I know what I'm doing and I know what those buttons do, and I can quickly change. Number 12 here is the one in the front of the camera again, the one on video I used to slow and cue. Well, for photo I do something a bit different. If I long press on it, it will actually go to like some sort of like a preset of settings. And the reason why I set it up right now, as you can see, that my shutter speed is 1/2000. My ISO is set to auto, and then the evaluative meter, like for the light, is in the little circle. And so the reason why I add this is that if I am shooting landscape and some sort of wildlife comes into the frame, an eagle or a whale or something, and I don't have time to change to my dedicated what I will call like wildlife settings, while pressing long on that button, I have something that's close enough and make sure that the shutter speed is to 1/2000, so the subject is somewhat dark shot. Those are all of my custom buttons, and again, the idea is to be able to quickly change to the setting I use the most. And the last one I want to talk about are those custom modes in photos. So you have C1, C2, and C3. And so C1 TV is my wildlife mode. So by going on this, I have all the settings I need if some wildlife come into the frame. So I have my eye servo, my shutter speed as a minimum value of 2000 to make sure I have somewhat decent photos of fast animals. I mean, I have this kind of like large IF window as well. And with the IF on, I have like this tracking basically. And the autofocus is set to track anything that walk into the frame here. C2 here is just a black and white mode, which I really like sometimes just to take things slower and kind of like see in black and white. It's very useful because it's also going to be in black and white in the viewfinder. C3 here is if I need to quickly go and capture a bird sequence in bracketing. And so right now it's set up to, you can see I have 3 photos, and it's like each photo have a difference of a 1.5 stop. Again, very useful if I have a very difficult light situations and I want to make sure that I grab everything, or if I want to merge them in Lightroom later on. Would I recommend the R5C in 2025? Absolutely. In fact, I almost bought a used one to replace my R6. And the only reason I didn't is that I want to see what Canon was going to do with the R6 Mark III if it's ever released, because potentially it could be a cheaper body with IBIS that I think would be a nice complement to the R5C. That being said, I don't think the R5C is for everyone. I think it's for creators who live in both worlds, for example filmmakers that still want the ability to shoot stills, or for photographers that want to step into the cinema ecosystem with a somewhat budget-friendly camera. And yes, there are plenty of other great options out there like the Sony FX3 or even the newly updated Panasonic S5 2X or something, but for me the Canon ecosystem and the color science and the reliability still draw me in to this day. The thing is that Canon doesn't always follow the trends, they tend to do their own little thing in the back of the room over there. And to be honest, when I first saw the R5C announcement in January 2022, at first I thought it was a joke. But after 3 years of using this camera, it helped me tell the stories I care about. And even in 2025, I don't think there is a better camera for me. The golden question now is, will we see a R5C Mark II? I don't think so, but honestly with Canon you never know. If you made it to the end, thank you for your support. This video was probably a little bit longer than expected, as always, but next time I'll cover my favorite accessories for my updated 2025 hybrid cinema rig, so if you're interested, make sure to subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.